Unrivaled investors know that I like and own Google stock. They generate tens of billions of dollars in free cash flow. They're one of the leaders. They're growing. They provide critical assets enabling billions of people each year. So I like and own Google stock. But when there's an existential threat that emerges, a potential Google killer, it is important for Google shareholders to understand what it is, what's the downside to potentially Google, and how should one consider the risks when they think about the valuation, the share price for Google stock. So if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Daniel. You're watching Unrivaled Investing. If you enjoy educational investment videos, please make a point of hitting that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. So let's talk about OpenAI, the potential Google killer that was launched. Is it actually a Google killer? What's actual risk there? How should shareholders sort of consider this risk? So OpenAI launched ChatGPT. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. This is a language model using deep learning or artificial intelligence to produce human-like text. So you give it a prompt and you get a response. I was blown away. This is available to the public. I recommend you check it out now if you're able to get access to it. So I asked OpenAI to write a limerick about needing courage if you're going to be a long-term investor. And I responded, there once was an investor named Ray who knew he needed some courage each day to hold on to stocks through all the market shocks. He knew that patience would pay. It's impressive. You know, you could ask for poetry, you can ask for songs, you can ask for scripts, you can ask for advertising. You'd say, hey, I want it in the style of Kipling in the poem If. I want you to write it in that style. You can change it any given way and just be blown away with what you're going to get. You can pop in an email that you got from your boss and say, you know what, I don't want to actually read this whole email. Can you summarize it for me? And it can summarize it for you. This is going to revolutionize the world, folks. I mean, you can take code, for example, and pop it in there and say, hey, tell me what's wrong with this code, or can you help me rewrite this so that it's simpler, or make it better, or explain this code to me? You can have it go through your bank statements to help you understand, oh, these are potential expenses that are tax deductible. You can plug it into effectively online communications to help you understand, for businesses to understand, what are your customers saying? Oh, your customers aren't happy with XYZ. Or it can help you with, grammar corrections with foreign languages. This is the revolutionary road that we're on with artificial intelligence. And you're seeing it from a company that is just arguably a few years old, and it's not one of the $1 trillion companies. It's $1 billion company. And that should make you a little squeamish, saying, wait a second, you're potentially changing the world, and this is not Google. So, what's that mean going forward in terms of having this power in your pocket? For example, you could even give it this prompt. One person posted saying, hey, please list 15 important inventions, who made them, what year, and in what country. It quickly prompted this list. And if you were to do the same thing in Google search, I'd argue you get a bunch of hyperlinks a bunch of links that doesn't list this. It doesn't make your life easier. So in some instances, this product that's free currently is better than Google search. And so it's only a matter of time before people say, wow, this is another type of superpower in my pocket that's really incredible. Now, you are starting to see that adoption by the general public. I mean, Sam Altman, who runs the company, he called out how in less than a week it crossed 1 million users since launching in the public. Less than a week, you're talking about 1 million users, just incredible. And this company, OpenAI, for the folks that aren't familiar, they're also the ones that launched DALL-E recently. That's the text-to-image generator, and they were founded by several, super smart folks, prominent investors, and entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, the chief technology officer of Stripe, the former chief technology officer of Stripe. So you have a lot of super smart folks. Reid Hoffman, business growing hyperspeed, with billion-dollar commitments. So the question is, what's this mean for Google going forward? Because this clearly is a new direction for the world. This is a new direction for how people will interact with technology. And arguably, it could disrupt parts of Google. So the question is, well, what happens from here? What happens to potentially Google stock? First, a quick plug. I have some exciting news to share. Have you ever wondered if a stock you own has a promising or perilous valuation? Check out unrivaledinvesting.com, as I just launched 2 new educational courses on investing. This is in addition to the Unrivaled Investing membership, dedicated to helping you find compelling investment ideas with real-time portfolio updates in our exclusive Discord community, available for annual subscribers. So in full disclosure, this is not financial advice, and at the time of this video publication, I do own Google stock. So the direction I think we're heading in was partially captured by the movie Her. Not surprising, I believe Her was partially encouraged or advised by Ray Kurzweil, the futurist, effectively getting in the direction where everyone will have a personalized artificial intelligence. That is clearly the road that we're heading in. What you're seeing with, the chat AI, OpenAI's, chat is a step in that direction. We're not there yet, but you will have a work AI that is intimately familiar with what you're doing at work. What are the projects? You can ask it questions. You can say, hey, summarize this legal doc, or can you create a legal doc for this contract? And that is a super powered tool. But you'll also have AI for arguably your intimate, what is actually going on in your personal life, relationships, friends, and you'll arguably heading towards a future where people will be having relationships with artificial intelligence. It's very easy to see you going down that road. And it's not surprising to think about personalized AI. It sounds very, very familiar to a prior message that Bill Gates had to say when rolling out personalized computers, or PCs, the personal computer market. He said, hey, I want a PC on every desk. And that was thought of, oh, that's crazy. And it created a multi-year sort of structural tailwind for Microsoft. That is the same direction we're heading in. Instead of a PC on every person's desk, it's going to be a personalized AI that is going to be like this. But it'll start with a basic, chat AI like OpenAI is launching, but then it'll be customized for every person that, that'll say, hey, this is based on your knowledge. And so that's the direction we're heading. Microsoft clearly knows the value here. So they already invested $1 billion in OpenAI in 2019, and they're in advanced talks to invest maybe another $1 billion at around $20 billion valuation. That's been rumored. So Microsoft, if they got their hands on this, if you were to say, hey, they could start rolling this out to every single Windows user in the world, every Excel user in the world, anyone using a Microsoft product in the world, saying, hey, this is nearly a free product, you could understand how quickly this could potentially disrupt something like Google. Because a lot of people are starting to say, hey, I'm still going to use Google because you can't fully trust this. This is like a version. This is like having a guy in your office that can answer a lot of things, but sometimes he's BSing you. And so you need to be able to understand what's reality and what's BS and be able to, parse your way through it, but still exceptional product. And so I think Microsoft is extremely aware of hey, we already have that connection to billions of users. What if we just sort of offer this as a free service? Now, I think that's the direction that you're eventually going to head. And that, it's people could say, well, that's like Bing, which is their second tier search engine, which does generate Microsoft plenty of money. But could you have something like this where users go, wow, I'm just so blown away by this, and they start using the OpenAI product that's effectively channeled or marketed through Microsoft? So we'll see what that means. Now, is this a huge impact for Google potentially? Absolutely. I mean, their Google search and other owned properties is in the most recent quarter, 40 billion of their revenue out of 61 billion of Google services revenue. So a very sizable part of their business. Now, it's not going to completely disrupt it. That's not what I'm saying right now. And it's also very, very important to understand Google has some of the best AI engineers in the world at DeepMind, and some of the things that they've come up with is just truly mind-blowing. And so it would be foolish to say, hey, I don't think Google is going to be able to launch something that OpenAI did. But they might just be moving slower because they're a bigger company. But it should be a little alarming to see, hey, there's this small startup, relatively small, $20 billion valuation, let's say, that's launching products that could disrupt part of the core aspect of this $1 trillion company. So that is something for investors that I think you need to consider. And so what's that mean? That means potentially lower growth rates, and potentially lower valuation multiples that you think out 5 years from now. Because you want to say, hey, there's more risk here. There's more uncertainty. So I want to be able to effectively handicap that risk. I want to understand that risk as I consider it, as I think about the valuation. Now, I do think that they will eventually launch their own version, that will be probably on par with what we're seeing, maybe better. But this takes time. For many years, investors were like, oh, it's just a matter of time before someone launches a product that competes with Netflix. And it took like a decade before Disney got their act together. So you have that risk. When I think about Google's valuation, I'm thinking about this and just their Google services business, assuming 5 to, let's say, low teens % annualized growth in the years ahead, assuming high 30% profit margins, which is where they've been in the past. They could easily be higher if they were to, let's say, run a more efficient operation. It's not trading at an expensive multiple at all. And based on assuming a lower multiple range. So I am looking at this as an existential risk. So I am lowering my multiple range from 15 to 19 times. Previously, I assumed low 20s, sort of the upside. I think there is more uncertainty here that investors do need to consider. So I'm saying, let's do 15 to 19 times earnings multiple, but still looking at this business, looking at just their Google services business, I think there's, the stock's either flat over the next 5 years or up over 100%. And that doesn't even factor in all their additional assets like DeepMind, like Google Cloud. And so arguably there's even more upside than what I'm penciling here. So I think there's a couple of other key aspects that investors need to consider. So first of all, this is not certain, but it is a real risk that is emerging. When you have something that over 1 million people in a week say, wow, this is really cool to use. Why don't I just use this in lieu of Google? So you could have that sort of risk happen over time. I don't think it happens overnight. I think you will see that progression over several quarters, several years play out. And I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think, that it's nearly good enough at this point. I think what you're really talking about, I think the risk is there. Let's be crystal clear. The risk is there, but I think it's 3 to 5 years from now. I don't think it's 2023. I think you start seeing it playing out over, let's say, 3 to 5 years. I think it's important to consider a lower valuation framework. This doesn't help valuations for Google. This doesn't make me say, hey, this should be 20 to 30 times earnings anymore. This makes me think, hey, if you can throw in some of the best, engineers in the world, and then have this other company, so you have DeepMind, which is developing incredible stuff. And then you have this other company that also, teams up with, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and gets this huge investment from Microsoft. Elon Musk is no longer, part of it, is my understanding. But if you could just have something launch within a few years and create this threat, it does mean, okay, the future is going to be more uncertain. And so you should discount that. Is this an iPhone moment where you're sort of saying, like this is the next new major product, secular tailwind? I personally view this as more like a MySpace moment, or to keep the analogy appropriate, more like a BlackBerry moment, where the iPhone hasn't yet come out. The next generation product that truly revolutionized the world. I'm not sure that this is it. This might be, but I'm not sure that this is truly the iPhone moment. I think this is more like the BlackBerry, where everyone's like, oh, this is super cool. Let's use it. This isn't the like, oh man, this is perfect, or this, it doesn't have these BS problems. Because there are some very clear like examples where you try to do it and it's just like, oh, I'm clearly, BSing you with this answer. And it's like, this isn't right. So that's important to understand. It's also important to understand that advertisers go where the eyeballs are and where they can get an attractive return on investment. So we're saying, hey, we're going to spend this money here for search. And that's why search is such a remarkable business. So that is not something that's going to change overnight. That will take time, years, to potentially migrate and prove the case for a return on investment model. And keep in mind, this might not even be an advertising model. This might be a whole new paradigm. This might be, hey, pay like the blue check mark in Twitter. This might be a pay for access type of business model, saying, hey, let's charge $10 a month and you can use this unlimited, or $20 a month, or we'll have enterprise accounts where, it's per seat. So we'll see how this evolves. Right now it's free, but it's super early days. I mean, just launched earlier this week. I think right now Google's still in a fine position, and that's why I own it. And they're going to keep generating significant free cash flow. And you can bet that they're looking at this and saying, oh, snap, we need to launch something very soon. But the reality is, like, DALL-E, which is their text-to-image generator, which OpenAI launched earlier this year, Google still hasn't even created something like that the public can use. Google has something, but there isn't something that the public can use. And so my view is like, hey, are you going to get held up by bureaucracy and miss this potential iPhone moment or this potential new big shift? So I don't think Google will miss it, but we'll see. It's a risk that investors need to consider. So I look at Google stock. I still like it. I haven't made it a super big position, partly given the dynamics of like, hey, you're facing a recession. You have the challenges with advertisers, and they're saying, hey, we're coming up with pressure from inflation, and consumers aren't purchasing that the way you would previously. And you look at prior recessions, and you see advertising companies get hurt. So I personally haven't made it a big position yet. Maybe I will, but I'm thinking like, hey, this definitely changes how investors should consider thinking about Google stock. And I hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, please make a point of hitting that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in.